Hi everyone, my name's Lily and I am the book reviewer behind Utopia State of Mind, and I'm bringing you another installment in my Books to Adaptation series. So if you're new to the channel or new to this series, basically I will read a book and then X amount of time later I will watch the adaptation and share my thoughts before and after. This time though, it's coming to you all at once. I have been seeing hype for lessons in chemistry all over the place. And so over the holidays, I was like, okay, maybe I'll pick it up. And then I wasn't sure if I was going to pick it up, but I got it out from the library. And then I saw news that saying in January, the first weekend, Apple TV or whatever was going to be allowing you to watch for free that weekend. And I was like, ugh, I guess I'm actually going to have to read it right now so I can get ready for this because I don't have Apple TV. So this installment is coming at you a lot sooner than planned by financial necessity. So basically, here are my thoughts about lessons in chemistry, and then I will share my thoughts about the first episode of Lessons in Chemistry in the TV adaptation. So my first thoughts about Lessons in Chemistry was that I didn't know that there was a trigger warning in Lessons in Chemistry, but I should have been made aware of that. Basically, there's a trigger warning for sexual assault in Lessons in Chemistry. And, like, the book just kind of makes your blood boil in terms of historical fiction sexism. Like, it is just, I know based on conversations with other people, based on historical fiction, other things, like I just know that it is actually kind of realistic to the deep rooted sexism within, for example, women in the workplace, women in STEM, kind of just women in general, specifically within the United States. But still, it is something different to see it on the screen as well. Like, it will never cease to make me upset. And it did not cease to make me upset here. And it's just, oops, I just deleted all my notes by accident. It is just something that is just, like, Elizabeth just gets it in so many different ways, not to mention the fact that she is a woman. She's a woman who's trying to make it in a STEM field at that time. She's also an unmarried, unwed woman who ends up having a baby. Like, everything is kind of stacked against her. Everything is piled against her. And you kind of feel, it kind of straddles this line between being like, that sucks. That deeply sucks on so many levels. It is awful. It is unjust. It is unfair. Like, but at the same time, it doesn't get kind of bogged down with all of those things. Like, it doesn't keep us in the kind of despair. Elizabeth as a main character is very much kind of like, this is just the way it is. I have to keep going. I have to keep surviving. And I have to sort of keep fighting for my voice to be heard. And that's one of the things that I really appreciated about Elizabeth as a character, which I do not necessarily channel, which is this kind of unapologetic commitment to being herself and voicing her opinions despite all of that stuff against her. I liked that, and I could see why this book is popular because it does, as I said, talk about the historical fiction and talk about the injustices and oppression in the past, but does not necessarily leave you at the end feeling kind of like, oh my God, I'm so upset kind of vibes. There is kind of a insightful hopefulness, and specifically in her world, right? So it's a deeply individual story about kind of Elizabeth, and there are sort of ripple effects as well to Elizabeth's actions, but more or less it's kind of focused on Elizabeth's life, and Elizabeth kind of making a space for herself in this awful world stacked against her. And so I enjoyed that a lot. I enjoyed a lot the scenes where she is interacting with her kid and her dog. There's kind of POV switches between her and her kid and her dog and other people as well. I wouldn't say it's strictly multiple perspective. It's sort of this omniscient narrator who goes around kind of blipping in and out of people's thoughts. And so I was kind of wondering how they were going to do that in the movie. Like, were they going to stick strictly to that? I don't know. Or I do know, but I'm going to pretend I don't know for the series of this, for the sake of this, this installment. But it was just something that I was interested in. And I also enjoyed Calvin and her relationship in the sense that it's kind of a melding of the mind. Although, like, I would be deeply upset by Calvin. And to be somewhere, sometimes I was. Like, I understand this whole, we have the stereotype of like scientists or scientific men, I guess, who are just so absorbed in the pure science that they don't see anything around them. And I'm kind of like, that is a deep privilege. And Elizabeth does point that out. But just when I think about me and if I would like try to talk to Calvin, I would be so deeply upset by him and the privilege that he has. Like, I don't live in that historical fiction time period. I obviously live in this time period, and I'm still deeply upset. So, I don't know. Like, it was cute, I guess, but at the same point, I feel like Calvin could do a lot of unlearning. I know that he's trying and he's like, oh my God, sexism. I had no idea this existed. I'm just a man. But at the same time, it's just like, come on. It felt, I don't know. It felt like something I could not relate to because I can't. So I don't know, that whole aspect, I like suspended my disbelief on that relationship in terms of my own preferences and my own anger, I guess. But yeah, it was just, I also felt like I did enjoy this, but I did feel like some aspects needed a little bit more in-depth introspection, not even in terms of Elizabeth and just other of the kind of blips into other characters, but sometimes I felt like I could do with a little bit more kind of internal angst, internal introspection. For me, that's just kind of the type of reader I am. I really enjoy some introspection, some like angsty lying on your pillow at night, like I don't know what I should do. Should I do this? I feel so deeply conflicted. And maybe I mean, that's just the type of reader I am. I've talked about this in the past. But yeah, I did think like some characters or some bits needed more. And I think goes back to the writing style. This is omniscient narrator. And so while it is possible to give that as an omniscient narrator, as a narrator who kind of sees all, they're omniscient. This one doesn't. So I did enjoy it. I liked it. But I was intrigued to see kind of how it would be portioned up into a TV series. And yeah, now I'll talk about my thoughts about Lessons in Chemistry, Episode 1. So, already based on the previews I saw, like the coming up in the first episode, I knew that they changed the order. And I have conflicting thoughts about this. So at the very beginning, most of my notes are just like, why are they changing the order? And in some ways, I understand that you have to kind of hook audiences within the first episode to get them to keep watching, specifically in how the media works nowadays. So it really made me think about timing. Timing in a book versus timing in a movie, because you could really argue the same thing about timing in a book. You have to hook people at the very beginning of a book, otherwise they're not going to want to finish, unless they're hate reading. So it works similarly, but I feel like in different ways. And because of the way that kind of TV shows are given, where it's kind of the pilot or bust in a lot of ways, or the first season or bust in a lot of ways, it's a lot of pressure to get the timing right and to get the hooks right, because you can't just hook someone once. You have to kind of see all of the different ways and hook them in a variety of different ways, if that makes sense. So for example, I always think about how Netflix or whatever will change their thumbnails based on what they think will hook you. So for example, sometimes I'll see, like a famous actor that I didn't know was in the movie, and then they're a side character. Or sometimes I'll see a dog and it's like, okay, the dog is obviously a side character, but I like dogs. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about in the ways that it has to hook you. So I already kind of knew that this was going to happen, and I prepared myself, and I just know that it's kind of what you have to expect when you're watching adaptations, specifically TV series, I feel like. It just has to get you, I guess, is how I'm going to frame that. Some other things, other sort of smaller observations I had was I love A-line skirts. The fashion in this movie I really enjoyed. Sexism aside, racism aside, like all of the isms aside from this time period, I love A-line skirts. A lot. That's one of my minor observations here. I also forgot that the TV shows that we're seeing, like Elizabeth in, would be black and white. I don't know why I didn't think about that, because, I mean, I have watched black and white movies before, but I completely forgot time period wise that would be there. And so the the timing just like keeps coming up in my notes because I'm just like, oh, why did you do this? And then after a while, when I was re-looking at my notes, I was like, look, you specifically, Lily, are not being a purist in this because it's not that deep for you, right? This is not a piece of treasured media where I'm kind of like, oh, I wish that they would get this glance right, or this internal introspection right, or this particular scene right. I think for people who feel that they really love a piece of media or love an original when they see an adaptation, they want everything to be exactly how it is. And I'm that's just not how I am for this particular piece of work. And so I had that thought immediately kind of throughout the whole time. The timing shifts, the little things that we're introduced to at the beginning, like we're introduced to her kind of turning down the sponsorship, which happens way later in the book, honestly. But it's something that kind of gives a good snapshot into Elizabeth's character, so I understand why they brought it to the forefront. But at the same time, I'm kind of just like, ugh, I wish that they had also kind of kept some of the things, the timing, but it's not realistic. The other kind of main observation I had was kind of like in the book, and I feel like you see this in a lot. In the book, we're supposed to be like, oh, Calvin's so awkward. He's so unattractive. Like, how can Elizabeth see anything in him? And they didn't keep that in the movie because, like, okay, conceptually though, he's a rower. He works out all the time. He's running. He's working out. Like, how... I feel like I didn't know who to expect in this film casting. Some of it didn't really jive with what I thought about in the book just because of that specific aspect. Also, their kind of meet cute moment is different in the book. Some of it is like the same and some of it is a little bit different. One of the things I really did like though was how the TV series, and specifically the first episode, really shows their lives intersecting without them ever knowing. Kind of the different ways they're in each other's orbit without them ever knowing. They pass in the halls, their cars pass. Like, I really appreciated that really small touch. That was probably my favorite part of the adaptations, is that we get to see them in the same space before they know they're in the same space. As a whole, I guess if I had to summarize my feelings about the adaptation, they keep the same elements, but maybe reorganize them a little bit. That's my little chemistry reference. And so I definitely did like it. If I had Apple TV, I probably would still watch this. I don't have Apple TV though, and I won't watch it until I get a free trial, I guess, of Apple TV. But yeah, those are my thoughts about it. Let me know down below what you think about timing and whether or not you feel that a adaptation specifically and strictly has to follow the order of the book that it's adapting. So I will see you in the next installment. I have nothing planned, so also let me know down below what you want me to see, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.